Welcome to Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, sponsored by the UI Radio Network at uiradionetwork.org. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram at United Intentions and Twitter at Higher Intention. Look for us on 99.1 FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and many more. Over the next hour, we'll introduce you to some fascinating people and engaging discussions that may provide you with answers to assist in revolutionizing your own personal health. And now, here's Dr. Nelson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, the host of Health Matters on the UI Media Network. I hope that everybody has kind of caught your breath and everybody is calming down and the world is settling down a bit. I know I have people all over the world who listen to my show, and here in the United States, it's been on the crazy side. So I hope that this week is better. I know we had a very turbulent, chaotic week last week. There were a lot of hard feelings, some really nasty things that happened, and I wish all of you peace, love, and joy. And I don't say that to sound like a hippie from the 70s, but there's just been so much violence and so much turbulence here in the United States lately. So for all of you, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and I hope that you are able to catch your breath. I know one of the big problems that a lot of people have been talking about this week is last week here in the United States, it was so incredibly intense with the murder of George Floyd up in Minneapolis by the 4 police officers that feelings were really, really high, and everybody was on a knife's edge. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is I have an incredible guest. She's a biochemist researcher out of London, England, and her name is Isabella Cooper, and she's just a delight. She is brilliant beyond words and really has an understanding of biochemistry at the Ph.D. level and has the wonderful ability to make it understandable for us. And how and why that's important to you is because I know that many of you, the number one complaint that I've had my patients and friends out in the world, and by the way, not even just in the United States, from all over the world. I have people from Russia, from throughout South America, from Central America, throughout Europe who contact me on a daily basis relating to the many shows and many videos and posts that I put out there. So really, really appreciate all of you. I can't stress that enough. And for those of you who are following me here in Atlanta on WGJY, FM 99.1, and in Kentucky and Ohio on 101.2 FM, thank you. I so appreciate you. Now, for those of you who want to watch and listen to our uncensored material, and I can't believe I have to say that, but the truth is YouTube and Facebook, as 2 examples, are starting to do a ridiculous amount of censoring. So for those of you who want to hear all our exclusive uncensored content 24/7, please, not right now, I want you to pay attention because we have a really great show for you. I want you to go to uimediaapp.com after the show and download our app. That way you can listen not only to my shows, but there's some incredible media hosts here out of this amazing UI Media Network. You have lots and lots to learn about pretty much any subject you can imagine. And the neat thing about us is we are a conscious media network. So we do not censor. We keep it real, and we're honest here. Good, bad, or ugly, we report it. Okay? Now, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear what you have to say at 678-495-4345. We'd also love to connect with you online. You can follow us on social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spreaker, and other podcasting platforms as UI Media Network. Now, sometimes some of you actually ask me if it would be possible for them to have their own show, which is impressive because it takes a lot to do your own show. It's a lot harder than you think. Sometimes people think, well, Nelson, you're just sitting there talking, and they don't realize that I'm having to moderate a conversation with my guest. And usually, of course, the guest has a high level of expertise in a particular area that I might not have any understanding of. So that's challenging. And then I have my amazing, I'm smiling at him right now, and they're smiling back, my engineer, Ashley Abel. I love that. And Suchi, my producer. And they're wonderful. They take great care of me. And it's really quite a thing. But if you have any interest in becoming a radio host or a media host, you can simply send us a message at contact@uimedianetwork.org, and we'll teach you how to do it. Okay? And remember to visit us at www.uimedianetwork.org to keep up to date with all our events, programs, and hosting possibilities. Now, I want to tell you about a show that is on tomorrow. Meditative exercises with host Arlene DeHumko. I got it right this time. Yay me. And Dr. Chris Lasser tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Multidimensional MD Waking Up Medicine show. All right. I am so excited. I feel like we're really, really blessed. We have an incredible spirit here, and she is, sometimes you have those people you meet who you're not sure, am I more impressed with this or that? And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about herself because she is a true Renaissance woman. And every time she says who she is and what she does, I have to pause and laugh because it's so extraordinary to me. Isabella Cooper, welcome. It is so good to have you on Health Matters.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I hope I'm not making you blush here, but your background is so extraordinary to me. Would you spend just a minute and tell us about your very diverse background?
Okay, so you want to go all the way back to I classically trained as a ballet dancer as my background. So I trained here at the Royal Academy of Dance and Ballet to a very high level. And then I decided I wanted to go to university, and I studied art, industrial design and art at Central St. Martin's. Then I continued on in a career where I did a lot of art commissions and designs and things like that, marketing, sales, and different sort of brandings and things like that, paintings. This is one of my paintings behind me.
Yes.
Did some modeling, taught yoga. I did 7 years as an apprentice as a yoga teacher as well. Sort of a lot of different things, but mainly art was my background. And then I decided that I wanted to do something else. I believe in investing in a good, healthy life. So that means you can do a lot in your life. And I wanted to go back to study, and I studied biochemistry. So I didn't want to just believe what I read in magazine articles and books that say, you should eat this or you should eat that, eat right for your type, or, eat pH, changing, alkaline diets or anything like this. I didn't like that I was relying on someone else's opinion.
Right.
And I wanted to understand, I wanted to be able to break it down myself to make sure 1 + 1 really equaled 2, and to really understand it. And I realized that, the only way I can do it is if I go back to study, and so I went back. As a mature student.
And I completely get that. I just like for you to go from art to getting a Ph.D. in biochemistry is, we talk about bandwidth, you and I, like one of the things as that you'd really like to have if some deity ever said, Isabella Cooper, I'm going to give you a superpower, what would it be? I know your answer. You're going to say, Nelson, I want increased bandwidth, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
for me, that would be a dream, increased bandwidth.
Here's the thing, Isabella. I mean, what you went from art to a PhD in biochemistry. Do you need much more bandwidth than that?
Well, I'm still doing the PhD as a PhD researcher. And I think that most PhD researchers suffer that sort of like, I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is, you actually, the more you learn, then the more you push in bringing together knowledge, the more you start to think, oh my God, there's so much, I don't know anything.
Yes, it's a big universe out there. Well, let's look at that. I know that you're particularly fascinated with things like energy production within the cell. Like yes. May I call you by your moniker? Bella Mitochondria. I love that name. Every time I say that, my friends laugh and say, how cool is that? So I'm going to call you, from this point on, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Bella Mitochondria, because that's really kind of your focal point, right? I mean, you have,
it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Why is it so important? And I want to qualify this because there's some people saying, what's he talking about? What? So the mitochondria is the powerhouse, right? The energy generator of the cell. Why is that so incredibly fascinating to you in particular?
So most people learn about mitochondria in high school, middle school or high school. And when they learn about the cell, which is the smallest unit of life, they learn about these little organelles. So they're almost like, if you imagine our body, we've got these organs inside, and the mitochondria are the little organs inside of a cell.
Right.
And we always attribute them to be the major energy producer for the cell, because everything that needs to be done to get work done, it requires energy. And so these mitochondria are really, really important, first and foremost, for this energy. But what a lot of people don't realize is they actually do a lot more than just provide energy. This is the tip of the iceberg. They're actually in control. And there's several things that can control the direction a cell goes in terms of like its growth phase. It's sort of like when you're a baby and then you're going to become a teenager, and then from a teenager to adult. A cell goes through that. It has a progenitor phase, then it grows and it sort of builds everything inside. Then it does its job. So it's like you're in your 20s now. You've got to go out and work in the world. And then it actually has a dying phase, a senescence phase. And, a lot of things can go wrong during that time. But ideally, if things are going well, then the mitochondria actually also control the controlled cell death pathway. So they also control healthy dying. It actually controls it.
Wow.
And so a lot of the time when you're, with a lot of chronic illnesses that we have, that pathway, that mechanism that the mitochondria are at the hierarchy of controlling, because there are other things that control it, but mitochondria are at the hierarchy. So they're the first and foremost, most powerful controllers of controlled cell death, which is actually called apoptosis, or I think in America you might call it apoptosis.
That's correct.
So they do that, which is obviously super important, because if that's dysregulated, if you don't have controlled cell death, you're on the pathway that's cancer. Because it's dysregulated there.
Right.
And even if it's not cancer, if a cell is misbehaving and doing really bad things, then you want it to easily be engulfed by immune cells, and you want it to sort of go away, go to sleep. You want it to apoptose, and damaged cells can often do that if they're not too damaged. There are mechanisms, and again, it's the mitochondria. And not only that, the mitochondria actually is where heme for hemoglobin is made. So your ability to breathe and bring in oxygen and remove carbon dioxide that's based on hemoglobin that contains heme is made inside of your mitochondria. So you need to have healthy mitochondria to do that. And so when it comes to dealing with sicknesses, well, first and foremost is what can we do to prevent getting sick? What can we do to minimize? And, we will get some sicknesses. Never in our life, we're not going to, catch this flu or that cold or, get stomach, but we will. And it's arguable that, constantly fighting little battles is actually good for our health in many respects. We know that animals that are raised in completely sterile environments actually don't do well. They don't do well. Humans the same. Take too many antibiotics, wipe out your gut flora. Being in a super sterile environment is not actually good for you. And so this sort of microdosing of exposures to pathogens that constantly engages our immune system, but not just our immune system in terms of the white blood cells, but everything else, the mucosal lining, the bacterial profile in your stomach, skin lining, all these things. So everything we do in terms of how, if we get sick, how do we face it? How does our body face it? Having a robust system, that's what you want to aim for.
Yes.
You want to aim for a robust system. So what will give you a robust system? What can we measure that will influence it? In terms of what can we measure? Mitochondria. So, we have blood biomarkers that we measure quite often. But one of the things that's been, you can say it's sort of the rage now in research is the mitochondria, because I think we've spent the last 50 years focused on the nucleus and on the DNA.
That's
and
right.
It's always DNA. And this is the microbiology world. When we discovered the code and how DNA is constructed, we sort of look there all the time. And I like to equate that to, you have your computer, which has all these programs on it. And even all our computers can be networked together, and we can be interfaced into some super system that has all these programs. But if you think we as the people are all mitochondria, we control what programs are being turned on, what programs are running. We control what programs are turned off. But if we're not well and we do crazy things, we might be bashing away at our computer and open it way too much that causes the system to crash.
Right.
So this is mitochondria. They actually are the conductors, but instead of having one conductor to a massive orchestra, it's the other way around. You get lots of mitochondria, and then the programs are inside of the nucleus.
Yes.
And the mitochondria are actually, symbiotic within each other, towards each other as well. And they signal to the nucleus what's going on.
Wow.
They send signals to the nucleus of what to do, which program to open, what program to close.
Bella,
So if you're
I hate so much to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. This is so fascinating, but we've got to take our first commercial break. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. I'm the host here at Health Matters, and I'm interviewing the incredible and fascinating Isabella Cooper, and we're talking about cellular energy production right now. We'll be right back.
At Heiser Orthodontics, we understand that your smile is a big deal for both kids and adults. We have the latest technology and state-of-the-art equipment. But honestly, what makes us unique is our patient experience. And we are not the only people saying this.
Heiser Orthodontics is amazing.
Superb.
Trustworthy.
Compassionate. A friendly place where they know what they're doing, and that's what I like about it.
We are a family-owned private practice where kids are valued, parents have a voice, and the entire Heiser team puts the patient first. Discover the Heiser Orthodontics difference. Call 470-330-9083 for a free consultation today.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Nelson Bulmash. I'm back with Isabella Cooper, and we're talking about cellular energy production. Isabella, so this, by the way, this is fascinating. One of the things that's so incredible is, as you know, I have a son who just finished medical school. He's getting ready to start his residency here in a matter of days. And I have a daughter who's also kind of in the same place you are. She's working on completing her Ph.D. as well. And so I have these fascinating conversations, and I feel a little outdated. I hate to say that, but because the knowledge you have is so incredibly novel. It's so unique. What you just shared, I didn't know myself. And so thank you so much.
It's endlessly fascinating.
Yes.
I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't still go, huh? Wow.
Right. Well, that's how I feel even engaging in this conversation. Well, let's do this, Isabella. What I want to know is, I know people are thinking, okay, this is interesting. So these little organelles, the organs, if you will, within the cell, produce energy. Well, can we change that? Meaning, if we have environmental circumstances, like we live in a world, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is known for having pretty bad air quality. How does toxicity impact the cell's ability to produce energy? And is there anything we can do to negate that? Meaning, are there any nutrients, for example, or can we help lessen the impact or the influence of toxins on our mitochondria?
Yeah, so I mean that's the thing. You ultimately want to have plenty healthy, robust mitochondria that are behaving themselves, that are doing the right thing. And so what are they affected by? They're affected ultimately what's outside of the cells, and then from outside of the cells, what's outside of our body, and what we put in our body, what we eat, and what we breathe in. These combinations, what we put on our skin even. But the biggest factor is going to be what we actually eat.
Right.
And so mitochondria being producing energy, they can produce it from a number of substrates, fueling types. The classical being glucose, so glucose, blood sugars, and fatty acids, fats,
right,
and proteins, and one that's not very well known, which is ketones.
Yes.
And they're not often grouped together. It's usually just fats, glucose, and proteins. But ketones,
right.
Actually. Yeah.
And that's very big, by the way, here in the United States. That's sort of really revolutionizing health in the United States.
Yeah. And in my PhD research, it's actually what I intensively study as well. I actually have in human trials, I study humans who are chronically in ketosis. And so they sustain a lifestyle where they produce ketones themselves endogenously, and a lot of their body cells are actually utilizing fatty acids and ketones more than it uses glucose. As their primary fuel source. And this, the literature research that's been coming out, which has been some amazing research that has come out, really shows that it actually makes really robust mitochondria. It's really healing. It's really healing. They love it. Yeah.
Very good to know. So you're a big proponent of this type of diet.
Yes, I am. Now, I'm not saying that a person has to be always in ketosis.
Yes, right.
I think that it kind of depends what it is you want to achieve. If you have a chronic debilitating disease, you have a metabolic cancer, then it is quite arguable that it would be beneficial for you to be in ketosis and possibly very deep ketosis.
Right.
But if you're not suffering any chronic diseases, you don't suffer the main one, which is hyperinsulinemia. And hyperinsulinemia encapsulates all the other chronic diseases. And the reason being, I'll explain, is when you eat the regular sort of standard American diet or the standard UK diet,
right.
Which is sort of somewhere around about 40% of your plate up to 60% of your plate is about carbohydrates.
Yes.
And so, I'm talking more about the sort of potato, pasta, rice type of carbohydrates rather than the broccoli and the spinach and the carbohydrates. So the starchy ones, the farinaceous ones, when you ingest them, they go into your bloodstream and cause your blood sugars, your blood glucose to rise.
Right.
And then this causes your pancreas to secrete insulin. And the sort of classical way people view insulin is it's to get the blood sugars down to a regular sort of healthy level within a range, and to sort of get that glucose into the cells. And the reason being is that it's not good to have elevated blood glucose levels. Right. So there's then a consequence to this happening, though. What happens is the insulin does more than facilitate glucose being taken up into the cells. It actually signals cells and tells them, you've got glucose coming in, so don't burn fatty acids and don't burn ketones. You need to burn the glucose. So there's a lot of consequences that come from that, because if you imagine sort of a ball or a coin going down into, those sort of I don't know, there's not slot machines, but the machines where you see all the coins.
I remember those, right?
Different ways.
Yes.
So sort of the way glucose goes versus the way fatty acids goes, with insulin, you end up with a different result at the end, and you get ATP, but it uses up other molecules inside of the cells. And one of them is really important. It's called NAD+. It uses this up. And it's really important, this molecule, because it attaches and is used in so many other chemical pathways. And it's used in pathways that facilitate good health, that facilitate more mitochondria, more antioxidant production within the cells. It facilitates things like DNA repair. And one of the things that it really facilitates is it slows down a cell rushing forward to dividing, mitosis, and going. So it gives the cell more time to do repairing jobs as well.
Right.
So you want to have lots of NAD+.
Yes.
When you are burning glucose, whereas that's your primary fuel source, you use up NAD so much more.
Right. Okay.
So burning glucose uses up 4 NAD pluses to make what we call 2-acetyl moieties. Burning fatty acids uses 2. Burning ketones uses, if it's beta-hydroxybutyrate, it uses 1, or if it's acetoacetate, which is a ketone, it uses none. So if you think about fatty acids,
so it's much cleaner, and it doesn't deplete your resources as quickly.
This is it. And the reason why that then feeds onto something is the NAD+ is used to produce these antioxidants that protect the mitochondria. Because as you burn fuels, oxygen's used and electrons are moved along what we call the electron transport chain. And these electrons are very reactive, and you've got oxygen around.
Yes.
And so in the end, you're going to end up with these superoxides and reactive oxygen species. So that needs to be managed. And so you need plenty of NAD that's used to bind with other enzymes to act as antioxidants. And so if you're using up the NAD, you don't have as much to activate these enzymes to counteract this, what we call ROS, the reactive oxygen species. And when mitochondria are producing too much ROS, the consequences are all over the place. So one of them is it affects the inside of the mitochondria along the electron transport chain. You have hydroxylases. So as an example, one of these hydroxylases activates vitamin D. So when you produce too much ROS, so if you're glucose fueling a lot and you produce too much ROS that you can't manage because you can't produce enough antioxidant inside of your cell, endogenous antioxidants, you're going to be affecting this hydroxylase, because again, the NAD is needed to produce another molecule called NADPH. And that's necessary to hydroxylate, which is activate the vitamin D. So it's activating vitamin D.
This is very interesting. So if you are burning too much sugar, you might get to the point where you can't properly activate vitamin D.
Yeah. And then that's just on the glucose side. The other side is because when you eat glucose, when you consume carbohydrates, that elevates your blood glucose, the stimulation of the insulin secretion that comes from it. Insulin itself has a problem because insulin, I'm talking about elevated, chronically elevated. Insulin individually by itself is life essential.
Right.
But what it is you want to have just enough and for you to be sensitive enough to it that it does a perfect job. And you don't want to have more than that.
Right.
So when you've got chronic elevated insulin, which is hyperinsulinemia, the consequences are that it affects the creation of certain molecules inside of your cell. One of them is ceramides, and ceramides then increase again ROS by itself. So this is independent of the glucose.
Yes.
The insulin is causing this. And again, it causes more ROS. And then this ROS, this reactive oxygen species, it's normally a signaling molecule. So you don't want to have no ROS, but you want, again,
you want to find that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Sorry for the pun.
Yeah. You want to exercise. You want to feel a bit of pain.
Yep.
And then you want to repair and get stronger and healthier. But if you over-exercise, you can actually really damage yourself.
Yes.
And then you actually get sicker and you don't repair. Right. And that's kind of the same with ROS. You want some, you need it, and you want the cell to be sensitive to hearing it, to responding to it. But when you have a system that's lots of glucose coming in, constant insulin signaling, you get so much ROS that it's really just shooting out everywhere. And it's like over-exercising and over-damaging yourself. Right. And so what happens is this reactive oxygen species then goes on to signal many other molecules inside of the cell and result in these cascades. One of them is it stabilizes hypoxia-inducible factor alpha, which is a hypoxia signaling. So this is one, and it stabilizes what we call the inflammasome. So the inflammasome is what then tells the cell to start making cytokines, tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-1, interleukin-6, nuclear factor kappa beta. These are, we hear about cytokine storm.
That's right.
Yeah. And this is this is the pathway that signals to cells to release these inflammatory cytokines.
Wow, so fascinating.
And so the thing is that you have these two. Now, this is just within the cell on the mitochondria here.
Right.
And so remember I was saying that the heme is made inside of mitochondria. So if you're creating lots of ROS, what's going to happen to the heme? What's going to happen to the mitochondria if they're not healthy? Can they make lots of heme now if it's needed?
Yeah, probably not.
So in the electron transport chain where ATP is made, two of the complexes of the chain, there are four, and then a fifth, which is the ATP synthase. Two of them, complex 2 and complex 3, actually contain heme as well. And if you get excess ROS there, you're going to damage them. And so you're damaging the electron transport chain, which again is going to affect your ATP production from mitochondria.
Right.
And so this is a problem. So you've got this, and this is going to damage heme, and it's going to make you need to make more heme, of course, right?
That's right.
So you've got damaged heme that has to be broken down, and the need to make more heme. Now, there are two consequences here, because damaged heme is broken down by what's called heme oxygenase. And the product of heme oxygenase, when it breaks down damaged heme, is biliverdin, ferrous iron, and carbon monoxide. So, if we use an example right now, people who are suffering from COVID-19,
yes,
they have elevated bilirubin. So biliverdin becomes bilirubin. They have elevated ferritin. So if you've got ferrous iron, it becomes ferritin. And one of the things that I think that should be measured is
ferritin.
Carboxyhemoglobin.
Right.
Is actually to measure the carbon monoxide levels, because when you have to constantly break down damaged heme, which is coming from damaged hemoglobin, because remember, glucose, when it's constantly elevated in your bloodstream, causes glycation damage. That's damaging hemoglobin. So again, you've got another avenue of having to repair, break down hemoglobin again. So all of this is going to lower your oxygen saturation capacity, because if your glycation damage is going to do that. And the problem is that insulin, because a lot of people think, well, if my glucose is elevated, I just need more insulin. I just need more insulin to lower it. But the consequence of that is really huge, because insulin, as we know, causes more ROS, so it's going to damage your
Isabella, I am so sorry. I'm interrupting you again. We've got to take our second commercial break. We will come right back and you can finish that thought, okay? Hey, everybody, Dr. Nelson Bulmash here, and Isabella Cooper is with me, and we're talking about all things regarding the powerhouses of the cell known as the mitochondria. We'll be right back.
This is Kurt Arsenault of Arsenault Advisory Group. Do you make a six-figure income but live paycheck to paycheck? You're not alone. Many six-figure income households will buy too much home and too much car, creating tremendous financial stress that builds debt when you should be building wealth. If you make six figures and live paycheck to paycheck, visit arsenaultadvisory.com and download our free ebook titled, I Make Six Figures and Live Paycheck to Paycheck. You have nothing to lose and potentially everything to gain. Visit arsenaultadvisory.com today.
Hi, everybody. We're back. Dr. Nelson Bulmash here. We have another edition of Health Matters. Isabella, my apologies for interrupting you. Do you remember where you left off there?
Insulin and its own effects on mitochondria and on health. So I was explaining how glucose was having this role and causing, with hemoglobin glycation damage. But the problem being is that a lot of people then think, well, if I just have more insulin, if I produce more, or if I inject with more, or if I take medicines that make me produce more, it will lower my glucose levels, and that looks great. But the problem is we're kind of like throwing a rug over the dirt and sort of hiding it. And because chronic excessive hyperinsulinemia, excessive insulin, comes with its own troubles. And so what happens is elevated blood glucose causes the liver to release coagulation factors, clotting factors that cause the blood to clot. Now, insulin stops your blood body from being able to break down those clots. So this is a problem, because you're not going to break down those clots.
Right.
Yeah, So of course, this is compounding the problem of damaged hemoglobin. It's also going to obviously compound the problem with regards to coagulation in the blood and increasing clotting factors. And as we know, people who have conditions of hyperinsulinemia, which includes obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, all of these conditions, cancer, conditions of hyperinsulinemia, quite a lot of them actually do have high rates of embolisms, thrombosis.
Makes sense.
And so they have problems with blood hemodynamics, and this is going to affect obviously oxygen carrying capacity.
Right.
And if you're not carrying oxygen very well to your cells, then how are you going to make ATP very well? Because your mitochondria obviously need it. And so coming back to ketones, which is very interesting, is that ketones in a physiological healthy range, which very particularly means having ketones up to about 7 millimoles per liter with normal glucose numbers. So with glucose numbers that are below 5.6. So if you have hyperglycemia with ketones, so if you're at 7 millimoles for your glucose or 8 millimoles for your glucose, and you've got ketones, then this actually means that you're on the type 1 diabetes spectrum. So
right.
Yeah. So this is insulin insufficiency. So it's a very different situation there.
This is really interesting. Forgive me, Bella. You just explained a great deal of what's going on with the patients who are suffering very severely from COVID-19. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking, okay, that's why this is a problem. That's why this is a problem. That's why this is a problem. This is fascinating. So I have a question for you. Do you think that many of these patients who are really suffering, if they can eat, should be on a diet that promotes ketosis?
I do. I think that rather than for these patients right now and being in hospital, I think that it might be difficult to sort of go straight to saying, well, they need to be in ketosis. I do think that it would help them. But I think that when you're dealing with these emergency situations, that what they need to be focusing on is really restricting the dietary carbohydrates.
Right.
Which for some of them, it will put them into ketosis, but others they won't, because they're so hyperinsulinemic already that for them to be able to produce ketones will actually be quite a miracle, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it's in that direction, certainly. And what my PhD research I look at is what we send off for these blood works with our doctors and scientists. What can the individual person test at home that can tell them they're doing it right, that they're doing what's right for their body, that they're eating the right things, that they don't produce so much insulin that it's pathological for them, as well as having healthy glucose numbers,
right? Yeah.
Right. And so what I research is if you have even 0.1 millimolars of ketones on your home ketone meter, whilst you also test your glucose as well, and you can see that that's not in any pathological number as well, which means that you're below 5.6 when you haven't eaten anything, and you have just 0.1, it means that you're on the ketones. It means that your insulin is likely not to be at a pathological number for you.
Got it.
So you don't know your insulin number by doing this,
Yep.
but you can tell why your insulin is not pathological. The reason why is insulin directly regulates your ability to make ketones.
Wow.
It regulates it.
Was not aware of that. Is that relatively new information?
Actually, no. I mean, I read a lot of the early biochemist research from the 1970s.
1970 this was available?
Yeah. There's a lot of amazing. You really have to dig into the archives.
Yeah, got it.
Fascinating. I think it was in the don't quote me on this, but I think it was the 1970s, maybe the 1960s. There was a scientist called George Cahill, and he had fasted some students for 2 weeks and had them really fully fasting for 2 weeks. So their ketones were at 6 or 7 millimolars per liter. And then he infused them with insulin to lower their blood glucose to 1 millimolar. So to put this in context, most of the time now in the regular clinical setting, it's said that if your blood glucose drops to 3.5, you are at risk of a hypoglycemic coma.
Yeah.
And that would be the case for someone who is not keto adapted. But if with people who are keto adapted, where they're really sufficiently making high levels of ketones in the absence of hypoglycemia, then the body actually just shifts. Everything shifts, and the brain starts to say, hey, there's ketones, we can use them. It's great, because the great thing about burning ketones is you produce more ATP per oxygen molecule when you're burning ketones.
Right.
Plus the bond in the ATP molecule, so the third phosphate bond carries more energy, more free energy in that bond. So not all ATP are equal. They're actually not.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the same time, you produce more endogenous antioxidants. To coming back to the NADs,
yes.
When you burn ketones for fuel, you preserve NADs and you actually produce more glutathione, reduced glutathione, which is the mega antioxidant in your cell. And so when you sum it all together, because it is the sum of everything, right? That you get this great result. And so people say, yeah, but if I don't eat carbohydrates, where's my energy coming from? Well, it comes from your fats and it comes from your ketones, right? And in terms of carbohydrates, glucose is essential for your body, but it's not essential in a dietary source. Your liver makes up to 150 grams of glucose a day. Right. So it can supply your bloodstream, your red blood cells. So mature red blood cells definitely need glucose. It's arguable that this central nervous system cannot be 100% off of ketones actually. We can't test it. It's non-testable because you can't shut off the blood supply to the central nervous system.
Right.
But what has been seen is it can go up to 70% of energy requirements provided by ketones.
Fascinating.
Which is amazing. There's some great scientists who, we have the PET scan, so we can have a look at where glucose goes in the body.
Yes, right.
So now there's the PET scan for ketones, And so we can see where ketones are going in the brain. And so what's been shown, for example, in Alzheimer's patients, where it was assumed that certain parts of the brain were just dying off and, there was no glucose being taken up, as seen by PET scans, when these patients were infused and given ketones, those areas of the brain that were, to not be working, they were just taking up all the ketones and working with them, which was amazing. And so the use of ketones in the body really loves it. The heart really loves it. And so in terms of like getting back to hyperinsulinemia and the conditions of patients right now who are the ones who are suffering the worst outcomes in COVID-19, we can see that the ones who are most at risk are, the ones who are obese, have type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension. These are the sort of up there on the risk
comorbidities, right? And
the comorbidities.
Bella, you said something to me a number of weeks ago that I thought was really fascinating, that one of the biggest problems that obese people had is they couldn't effectively activate their vitamin D3. So even if they had it, please correct me if I'm wrong, if I misunderstood you, even if they had enough, they might not be able to activate it sufficiently to have it effectively engage the immune cells so they got a better outcome.
Yes. So vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. We know that.
Yes.
And so it likes to go where fat is. And insulin is the fat storage hormone. It's the fat making and the fat storing hormone.
Right.
So when you eat the food that stimulates your body to make insulin, it also is making fat cells. It's shutting off your ability to burn fat, and it's making you store fat.
More fat, right?
So if you take vitamin D supplements, or you eat vitamin D rich foods, or you go out in the sun to try and make vitamin D, if you're eating a diet that is rich in dietary carbohydrates that stimulate secretion, a lot of that vitamin D is going to be sequestered and taken up into those fat cells and made unavailable for you. So that's one part. So it's now unavailable, locked away, saved for a rainy day, essentially. And so that's one problem. And the next problem is insulin affecting the hydroxylation, which, as I was explaining, inside of the mitochondria is where vitamin D is activated.
Got it?
Yeah. And so insulin is damaging that part of the mitochondria. It's increasing the reactive oxygen species. It's decreasing the counter antioxidant machinery that would prevent that from happening. So it's going to be affecting the vitamin D management just there. So and then there's some other things too. Hyperinsulinemia increases magnesium deficiency, and magnesium is necessary for the activation of vitamin D. Magnesium is necessary for vitamin D to be transported in the bloodstream. And so hyperinsulinemia is affecting these other minerals that are then again going to affect.
What a complex web, because most of the people, Isabella, that I test are deficient in magnesium. So they can't transport the vitamin D and they can't activate the vitamin D. So Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. And then it sort of gets massively compounded because there are medicines that make you more deficient.
Yeah.
Example would be proton pump inhibitors and antacids, things that stop you from having a good, strong stomach acidity. And so minerals need to be in stomach acidity that is below pH 2. Really below, I mean, maximum, let's say 2.5, but they need to be below that. Otherwise, if the pH level rises above 3, then the minerals, they precipitate out of solution and then they become unavailable to you.
Right. Sure.
Just there. And so proton pump inhibitors, antacids, they're going to have this effect. Diuretics, to lower blood pressure, they're going to have it where you're going to lose it through the renal system. So you end up with these mineral deficiencies, and they're affecting all those little enzymes that need to work to activate vitamin D, to transport vitamin D, to make to renew hemoglobin. That you also need these there. So a lot of things. A really good one is like zinc. I like to talk a lot about, when we go out in sunlight, it's not just for vitamin D. It's the one that we've always focused on. But when you go out into sunlight, there's an enzyme that's called ENOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase. And eNOS helps produce sulfate. And this sulfate then needs to get bonded with cholesterol sulfate. So it gets joined together. And the enzyme that does the sulfur transferase,
Right.
salt 2B, 1B, I think it is, salt 2B, it's vitamin D dependent. So vitamin D causes its expression and activation. But the sunlight part is actually to do with eNOS and producing sulfate. So it's a totally different thing, not to do with vitamin D.
Right.
But the next stage from the sulfate to bind to cholesterol is vitamin D dependent. And the reason why...
Hold that thought, Isabella. I'm so sorry. We're getting so into this. We've got to take our third commercial break. Hold on. I'll be right back. Folks, Dr. Nelson Bulmash here, and you're listening to another adventure with Health Matters. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Greta Full, President of Golden Home Services, a premier private home care service for seniors in Georgia for almost 2 decades now. We all have parents, and I know I love my parents more than anything else in this world. And because of that, Golden Home Services makes sure we care for your parents as if they were our parents. Call 678-242-0084 anytime, or visit goldenhomeservices.com to select from our range of affordable home care services.
Hi, everyone. We're back for our last segment of Health Matters. Thank you for joining us. I have Isabella Cooper here, and we're talking about how to maximize your energy production at the cellular level. Isabella, I have 1,000 questions I want to ask for you. Could we do a 4-hour show one of these days? Look, we'll sit here. You know, I understand that there are people who do podcasts now and they eat while they talk. I mean, just let me steal you away for about 4 hours one of these days because I have so many questions for you. Let's shift gears a little bit, if you don't mind, Isabella. What kind of things do you recommend for people to maximize their own energetic expression at the cellular level by how they eat and avoiding, things that are very caustic and toxic with regard to all the chemicals in the environment, some of the foods and so forth? What would some of your recommendations be? How do they improve their energy performance and energy production?
So I would recommend really cutting out refined carbohydrates and sugars. These are the two that are the easiest you can target. So anything from sodas and chocolate and sweet chocolate.
Oh, you just said chocolate, Isabella? My women are going to hate me.
Not dark chocolate, though. Not dark chocolate.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you, Isabella. I don't want to have I don't want to have my female fans. She said get rid of chocolate. Are you kidding me, Nelson? Never have her back again. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Isabella.
I'm up for that. I keep in the 85%, 100%.
I love it. I love it.
So removing the refined carbohydrates, and that does include and now remember, it's not how do I say? So imagine if you have a no carbohydrate diet and then you look at honey and you go, well, honey is still sugar. The body still sees sugar. But if you're going to have like virtually no carbohydrates in your day, if you're really avoiding them all, then a teaspoon of honey is going to equate to about 5 grams of carbohydrates. Sure. This is not. Yeah. So there is, annoyance to it, but at the end of the day, honey is a sugar. Just like any other sort of coconut nectar syrups, these things are still sugars. Right. And in the ideal world, minimizing where carbohydrates are broken down very readily and taken into the body with increased blood sugars, restrict these, because by restricting those, you take away the body's need to produce so much insulin. Makes sense. And so then you're resolving 2 of these things. Yes. And you actually resolve more things because you resolve blood pressure. You resolve high blood pressure because that gets resolved too, just there. Which we know, high blood pressure, hypertension, is classified as one of the leading causes of death. Really,
that's absolutely right.
And I always sort of say to people, well, if you want to make a gravy for your meal, a sauce for your meal, if you want to thicken it up, what do you add? You don't add salt, do you? Because it doesn't make it thicker. I mean, it might add flavor, but it doesn't make it thick, does it? Mm-hmm. You add cornstarch or flour, some sort of thickening cornstarch, flour, rice flour, any of these sort of flour. Right. Thickens. So this is like your bloodstream. Inside of your bloodstream, you're normally supposed to have 1 teaspoon of sugar, blood sugar, glucose. Okay. So if you think about it, 1 banana is roughly equivalent to 6.5 teaspoons of sugar on its effect in your body.
Wow.
if you think about it, you're thickening your blood.
Yeah.
Remember I was mentioning about coagulation,
Right.
coagulability.
Yes.
The problem, the insulin itself then stops the breakdown of this coagulability. And so, you've got this double whammy here. So you want to prevent that. And the thing is that your kidneys, all your blood goes through your kidneys every 4 minutes. And so your kidneys, everyone thinks the job of the kidneys is just to make urine, to take out toxins from the body, but it's not. Your kidneys actually do so much more than that. They check the quality of your blood. They check how viscous, how sticky and thick it is. They check the minerals. They check the hormones. They put hormones into the blood too, to send it off to do other things. And one of the things is the viscosity. It checks the thickness, the stickiness. So if your gravy is too thick, what do you do to make it unthick?
You have to water.
That's what you do. So what do the kidneys hold on to?
More water, increase the blood pressure. Brilliant.
Unsticky the blood.
Yes.
And you get in blood pressure.
Wow.
Right? And then the next problem is that you go, well, you should go on a low sodium diet because, that's going to help you not hold on to so much water, right? Because the body, how does it hold on to water? It does it by holding on to salt so that the water will follow by increasing the osmolarity.
Right.
And so it's going to follow the body. But the problem is low sodium diets increase insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia.
Fascinating.
You could go on a low carb diet that's low salt and still produce too much insulin.
And now what I'm getting also is that you're going to, with the increased viscosity of the blood, you're going to be at greater risk for heart attacks and strokes, in addition to high blood pressure. So this is
what we're actually seeing in COVID-19 patients. They have really increased rates of thromboembolisms, thrombi, increased risk. And so, you've got magnesium deficiency, they've got higher bilirubin, they've got higher ferritin, they've got low oxygen saturation capacity, they're having higher rates of thromboembolisms, microvascular thromboemboli. And one of the things, very quickly, when I was saying about the enos and going out in the sun and the importance of cholesterol sulfate to be made, is because cholesterol sulfate is what makes your red blood cells around them and your platelets and your endothelial cells have this negative charge around them so that they don't stick together, so you don't get deep vein thrombosis.
Got it.
Then comes pulmonary embolisms and other kinds of thrombi. And so, maintaining healthy hemodynamics from there.
Right. Fascinating.
So, cutting out as much carbs as you can, restricting them is most ideal. Now, some people, they will be saying, well, I don't want to cut out all my pleasures. So what else can I do in that respect? So, there is a hierarchy of, what's going to give you more bang for your buck. It is lowering refined carbohydrate intake for sure, because this is going to resolve your insulin need, your insulin secretion. And that's also, so it's going to affect your coagulability in your blood. It's going to affect your minerals that you can absorb. And therefore hydroxylating your vitamin D and regulating your blood pressure, minimizing blood clots, thrombi, things like that. The other thing is, if it's a struggle for you to cut out too many carbs, is time restricted feeding. So time restrict when you're eating. Don't snack. First thing is just don't snack.
Right. And you're probably a fan of intermittent fasting, is what it sounds like as well.
Intermittent fasting would be fantastic.
Right.
And some things just need to be worked up to. So, choosing to only eat in an 8-hour window is a good start. Every day you say, I'm only allowed to eat within that 8-hour window.
That's so hard. Oh my goodness. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Go ahead, Bella. I'm thinking, I'm the guy that used to eat for 20 hours a day or 16 hours a day.
So this is the thing. If you're feeling hungry very frequently and the need to, it's usually actually a sign of being hyperinsulinemic. It's a good way to have a look at that, actually, because of the way that the hormones are all regulated and making you feel hungry. So when you start to find that you are able to not eat for longer, to fast or time restrict, and you're comfortable with it, it's usually the next level of sign of showing that you're gaining metabolic health. And regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that I'm like, this is a joke with all my friends. Oh, Nelson, were you able to make it 90 minutes today? Were you able not to eat for 90 minutes? They're very good. And I'm not kidding you. I mean, so that was my first, I started at about 90 minutes. And then suddenly I went up to about 3 hours. And it was like, well, let's go out and, have a beer. Nelson meant 3 hours without eating. Now I'm about 14 hours. I really struggle at 15 or 16. I feel kind of off for the rest of the day if I go much beyond about 14 hours. But I've gotten to the point where I go pretty consistently about 14 hours a day.
That's fun. No, really, really fantastic. Really fantastic. And, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's not like, well, everybody should be able to fast for 24 hours.
Yes.
40. There are so many annoyances, your history, your background, your health history,
right?
Gender, menstrual cycles, pregnancy, teenage development. So there isn't a hard and fast rule. But what I can say is that it appears to be quite strong that dysregulated insulin secretion, hyperinsulinemia, so whatever causes hyperinsulinemia, which is the biggest impact is carbohydrate consumption, how much carbohydrate you consume and how frequently you consume it.
And probably how fast it breaks down as well, right? Some carbohydrates break down much faster than others. I'm sure that's going to have a big impact on this as well.
Absolutely. This is why we define the difference between vegetables versus pasta and rice.
Yes.
Having a difference. And so these are going to affect your insulin need and insulin secretion, and then therefore how that's affecting your mitochondria and affecting your cellular health. And essentially, we've got the history behind us of sort of eat right for your type, the alkaline diet. We've got all these different sort of things. And I would argue is eat right for your mitochondria. Do everything.
I love that. You need to write a book. This is the title for your book. You better make sure you write this down, Bella. Eat right for your mitochondria type.
The play on the moniker for Bella Mitochondria, obviously it's what I research as mitochondria.
Yes, right.
And Bella being the nickname, the shortened name of my full name, but also because Bella Mitochondria means beautiful energy, to have beautiful energy.
Beautiful energy.
This is it. So eating where you can maintain the health of your mitochondria, which is going to play into having a much stronger, robust system that can face the challenges that life always will throw at you. So
Bella, I have probably time for one more quick. We've got less than 3 minutes. Give me an idea. What is the ketone-based diet your favorite method right now of eating, or do you have others that you find that work very well, other than this type of diet?
So I do eat a very low carbohydrate diet,
right?
But I don't eat a no carbohydrate diet, because the thing is that when you get yourself to good health. Mm-hmm. And often that is through a very low carbohydrate diet by minimizing the need for insulin. By the time you sort of get yourself to very good health, your body actually can face food challenges and environmental challenges. To me, that's a sign of good health, that you can go and have a fantastic, spaghetti bolognese.
Right.
Because a really healthy body should be able to face that and be fine with it.
Of course.
And so that's your ultimate aim. Now, if you're very unwell, you've got to go through the process of healing your body. But once you've got to a place where, you are well and you have achieved good health, then I don't think that you have to stay constantly in ketosis. So, for example, for myself, 1 day a week, it's a full sort of a mixture. We might have, an Italian day, we might have a Chinese day,
Sure.
And we'll eat everything that's classically of those dishes. And what's very interesting is I am back in ketosis 3 hours after a high carb meal.
Wow.
Then you have good health, and I test this on participants in trials that I run, chronically keto adapted participants who really, more than 80% of their lifestyle is spent in ketosis. Now, not necessarily high grade ketosis, but just meaning that and what's very interesting is you do see that these participants who sustain this for a long time, their ability to consume more carbohydrates is actually more than people who are unwell. So during the time of being not of good health, your tolerance is much lower. And so it's kind of like having a peanut allergy. Just because you remove the peanuts doesn't mean you don't have the allergy.
Allergy there, yes. Right, I get it.
And so it may take a very long time, unfortunately, for your body to get back to that good health. But the body is amazing. If you give it what it needs, or you remove what challenges it too much, it actually can heal itself.
Right. Fantastic. Bella, I am so sorry. I would love to spend till we break our record of 4:43 in the morning, but I've got to let you go for right now. Will you hang on for just a minute while I close out the show? Thank you so much. It was such a treat, such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. We have concluded another edition of Health Matters. It's been such a pleasure to be here with Isabella Cooper from London, England. And I want to let you know that 2 weeks from now, I'll be back with Angela Langlotz, and she is the queen of videos. How you can use videos to get all your ideas out in the world. They're a powerful tool, and she will be here to help me help you understand just how to do that. Until then, always be your best. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, where we help you discover how to ignite your mind, body, and spirit connection. Join us next time when we will bring you more exciting guests and engaging topics. Meanwhile, feed your mind, exercise your body, and nurture your spirit. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests.